I have another Anna. Anna Beth from Florida. Anna, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
All right, nice. Okay, so how can I help you today?
Hi. Okay, so um my question is about something I kind of like wondered about for a while, like why all the Old Testament laws no longer apply. And I know in the New Testament, Paul is the one that mainly talks about how we are no longer under the old covenant and we're now not bound to the law and we're now in freedom in Christ. But
Mhm.
two verses that like, at the surface level, kinda seem, like, contradictory to me, and I know they're not, but I kinda just wanted to, like, get your understanding on it are Matthew 5, verses 17 through 20, and
Mhm.
Ephesians 2:15.
Okay, I have both of them up right now. Let me look at your Ephesians chapter 2, verse 15. I'm going to go ahead and read verse 14 as well. For he, Christ himself, is our peace. He has made both one and has broken down the middle wall, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, that is the law of commandments contained in ordinances, so as to create in himself one new man from the two, thus making peace, that he might reconcile both to God in one body through the flesh, putting to death the enmity. Okay. So it says, he abolished in his flesh the enmity. Okay. So I want to go ahead and just highlight this word, enmity. I think you guys see it through the Greek. So opposition, hatred. Okay. So this hatred actually comes from God. And the reason why is because if you look at Romans really fast, are you still there, Anna? Just want to make
Yes.
sure. So if you look over here in Romans 1:18, it says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of man who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So let me go ahead and just try to talk about this verse and then we'll jump into Matthew. Okay. God does not like sin because he is a righteous God. He he has to handle sin. He has to judge it. God could not be righteous if he didn't handle sin, okay? So it says Jesus himself is our peace. Why is he our peace? Why can we have peace? Because the wrath that originally was placed on us because of our sin, he has taken away. So he abolished in his flesh the enmity, that is the law of commandments. Okay. So the law is what essentially condemned us. God has a holy law. And because we fell short of that law, he abolished the enmity. He abolished in his flesh. Okay. He was treated as if he lived my life. So all that to say, we should have been condemned because we failed to accomplish God's law. So now this wrath, he abolished the enmity through him dying. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. And because of that, it made peace. Now let's go ahead and go to Matthew 5:17 to 20. It says, do not think that I came to destroy the law. Okay. He didn't come to say, oh, the law's done. You don't need to do it anymore. The law still needs to be taken care of, but it was taken care of through the cross. So
Okay.
understand this, God is still righteous. God is not just loving. Jesus had to die. So this is the beautiful thing about the gospel. Okay. Jesus died on the cross, and all of the wrath and all of the enmity, all of the opposition that God had on sin was placed on Jesus. God is still righteous. He's not just letting everybody into heaven, like, hey, everyone come in. No, it was paid for. But even though it was paid for, the law now just because Jesus paid the penalty, now I through faith, Jesus paid my penalty, so now through faith I can have everlasting life. And in Romans 5:1, it says, now I have peace with God. I am justified, declared righteous through my faith. So Jesus did not destroy the law, he fulfilled it. And the passage that you were mentioning before over here in Ephesians, it says that it's he abolished in his flesh the enmity, and that enmity, that opposition came from us essentially breaking the law. So Jesus didn't break the law, he fulfilled it because he was treated as if he broke the law because we broke the law. Does that make sense for you, Anna?
Yeah, like, for me, I guess, like, the thing that I've always the part that I struggled with was I always understood that the punishment that we were supposed to receive for breaking the law, that was paid for because he fulfilled it perfectly. I
Yes.
guess for me, it was more of, like, why, because people categorize the laws of, like, the ceremonial and the moral, the ceremonial,
Yes.
the moral, and the civil laws, and, like, I guess I just kinda wondered how some of them were necessarily fulfilled, but there are some that people say we should still follow, like the Ten Commandments, but we're no longer bound to the ceremonial ones. Like, what
Yes.
I just
Okay, so then I guess your question could be reformatted then to, well, why should we obey certain laws and why shouldn't we obey other laws, essentially? Is that kind of the question that you
yeah,
kind of had?
yeah, and I know some physically can't be fulfilled because there's no longer a temple, so you like, sacrifices which were fulfilled because Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice, things like that. I know those can't be fulfilled, but there are some that seem like they could be still, but people say, like, "Oh, we're no longer bound to those."
Right.
Yes.
And I would say that the audience that was intended in the Old Testament was very specific towards um, Israel, obviously, you know. And then you have the New
Mhm.
Testament that was directed towards the church. So now we're still in the church. We are in a kind of church age. The church has continued, and now we're just kind of waiting for the second coming of Christ. And then depending on your view of the rapture, but the idea is we people tend to focus on this is kind of debated. I do want to say that your question is I could probably have a whole video on this particular topic, so I can't give you the full answer right now. It's a very deep question, but what I will
Yeah,
say
I'm
is
aware.
that the that we as believers, because we are in the church, we ought to not just, we should learn from the Old Testament because I think we can eat shellfish and stuff, but we should also learn from it because I think a lot of those laws could bring life and are good and should be used. But I also think that the New Testament laws make things a lot more clear. So we should probably place a lot more emphasis on that. But then there's also Jesus talking about certain laws, so it looks like they're still in effect today. So all that to say, I would encourage you to focus and really look at the commands of the New Testament because God gives a lot more commands in the New Testament. But I would also say learn from the Old Testament as to which specific laws come from, or which specific laws we should obey and which ones we shouldn't obey. I don't think I can answer that in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So I
Yeah.
apologize for that. But I hope what I did answer helped at least a little bit.
No, I think it did, and I know that, like, Jesus there were some laws where he said this was the original purpose, like, with
Yes.
divorce. Like, I know divorce wasn't originally what that's not how it was intended, so he was telling them, "This is the original purpose." So I get that too, and I know it is a really widely debated topic, so I wasn't looking for a exact answer, but thank you so much, you really helped.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for joining our live stream.